In Roberto Corrada's labor law class, everything is negotiable, even the grading curve. That's because Corrada's students form a union and spend the entire semester learning labor law by participating in the collective bargaining process.
They want to talk about everything. Mostly they're interested in the grade curve. They want to negotiate the grade curve, and so what's interesting about the discussions is I talk a lot about my pedagogy, what my goals are in the classroom, and it's all oriented around how they can learn the most. And so the bargaining goes that way. So with the grade curve, if everybody automatically gets an A, guess what? People aren't going to study as hard, they're not going to learn as much. I think people come around to realizing if they're going to make arguments, they have to make arguments oriented around whether the learning in the class will improve or not. And those are the arguments I'm likely to buy.
During a recent class, students held an election to decide whether to unionize. Just like real union elections, it was overseen by a representative from the National Labor Relations Board. For this election, the NLRB representative was Michael Josserand. Josserand explained the voting process and certified the election results while answering questions from class members. Corrada encouraged his students to challenge every part of the proceeding.
I started teaching it this way a long time ago, about 12 years ago, because I realized that most of my students have never been in a unionized work environment. And then secondly, I realized that neither have they worked in industrial environments like making cars, for example. And a lot of the cases out of the casebook that we study for labor law are those kinds of environments. And they were missing a lot with respect to how an employer has leverage over employees, for example, and sort of the nuances of power. And so I thought, how can I get them that experience? And I thought, well, classrooms like a workplace in a lot of ways. You have a boss, the boss tells you what to do, and in fact students are way more deferential to profs than employees are even to their bosses. So I thought I could use it as an analogy and I'd just have the class unionized. What I've found out since then, in the last 7 years or so, as I've studied the field of education theory, is that active learning, constructive environments, collaborative learning like this actually enhances learning.
Corrada's class is a novel approach to teaching law and one that immerses students in a real-world setting, even though they don't leave the classroom. Students say the experience is far different than their other law courses.
It's really interesting. It's definitely different than anything I've experienced, certainly as a law student, but as an undergrad as well. Other courses, there's much less participation, a lot less engagement of the students, a lot more just reading cases, recitation of cases, and lecture, whereas this is sort of a dialogue back and forth.
I really enjoy the interactive nature of the class. It's a lot of fun to engage the professor, engage other students in the participation. I think it's really made the learning a lot more enjoyable.
Corrada has traveled the country to share his approach to teaching law classes and has won national awards for his breakthroughs. After witnessing Corrada's pioneering approach to teaching, the question remains, what happens if the student union decides to strike?
Well, I've never had a strike. I've had a partial strike, which is illegal. So I was able to put an end to that very quickly. The analogy sort of breaks down there. Do I really care if the employees go out on strike like an employer would care? An employer loses business, loses productivity, but I just get to not teach class. And I think the students realize that there really would be nothing to prove there. They also don't lose any, well, they lose learning maybe. So they stand something to lose. So I've never had a strike. There are probably some good reasons for that. Although who knows, this is a feisty group. Maybe I'll get a strike this year.